which we have 2 items in, and then we'll move into our regular agenda. So Emily, we have a climate item first in our workshop.
Yes, thank you. So tonight I've asked Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission consultants to come out and speak with us about the Climate Adaptation and Action Plan initiative in Saco. I've given you some very brief updates on this over the course of the last few months in the planner updates. So I thought this was an opportunity for them to speak to you directly. And what I'm going to do is just run through a relatively quick PowerPoint that we gave to Energy and Sustainability Committee. So Energy and Sustainability Committee is a committee within Saco, and they signed us up for something called the Community Resilience Partnership through the Governor's Office of Policy and Innovation of the Future. And through that work, the city applied for a community action grant. And so this project is a grant-funded initiative to create a climate adaptation and action plan that's been underway for some time now. With this, other communities regionally, you might have seen some stuff about Biddeford doing a plan and some other communities that SMPDC is working with, so it'll have some regional context as well. So I'll just give an overview on where we're at, and then we're probably gonna all stand at the podium because it'll be awkward otherwise. So as I get set up, I'm just going to ask SMPDC folks here to introduce themselves, give you a little bit of quick background about the project.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Sherwin. I'm a senior planner and coastal resilience coordinator with Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. And I'll turn it over to my colleague Melanie in just a moment, but I also wanted to mention that our colleague Karina Grader, who works on sustainability issues at SMPDC, is also working on this project with Saco.
Hi, I'm Melanie Nash. I am the Sustainability and Resiliency Planner at SMPDC, and I'm pretty new to SMPDC, but we'll be working on Saco's CAP, so that's why I'm joining here tonight. So I'll pass this back to you, Wellington.
Okay, you two can stand up here with me and add any input along the way. So SMPDC, like I said, they've been working regionally on these programs as well. They're also the service provider for some of the grant work at the state level as well. So the project started out with a baseline greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and then we went into a vulnerability assessment. So both of these documents SMPDC provided for us, they're in draft formats, and they've been provided to the Conservation Commission as well as to the Energy and Sustainability Committee, and they're available on our webpage at sacomaine.org/climate. So we've had a dedicated webpage to this process for some time now. We've done some social media outreach as well. The vulnerability assessment was then the next step, and we can get some high-level overview of what each one of those are as well if you're interested, but you can also get to them right on that webpage. The Energy and Sustainability Committee and city staff provided some initial baseline assessment information that will inform the next stages of the plan. And then we did a climate plan survey, which we had asked you folks to participate in as well. And so we got really good responses to that survey. We were pretty impressed with how well it did. It was over 670 responses, so we were very grateful to the community members who responded. Do you have any questions, first of all, before we go to the next slide? Okay. So the next steps were reporting back to SMPDC on strategies, and then the SMPDC is moving forward preparing the draft plan once we're finalized with the strategies, and we're pretty close to doing that. So the climate survey results, we just kind of gave you here some high-level survey results. 65% noted that they were extremely or very concerned about 10-year impact of climate change. 81% really wanted to preserve, protect, and restore natural areas. 59% of respondents wanted us to look at increasing biking and walking safety. And 64% preferred emails to stay informed on the plan, which is good to know. And then 86% of respondents were Saco residents. So we did not limit it just to people who were Saco residents because this plan is supposed to sit within the regional context of what other communities are doing. And Abby, those other communities that you're working with are?
Right now, we're working with 4 other communities to develop local climate action plans. So those are the city of Biddeford and the towns of Kennebunkport, and Kittery.
So we wanted to look at how this plan fits into the comprehensive plan that was just approved by the state in March of this year, and that plan is supposed to take us from 2022 to 2034, so it's not, policies and strategies in that comp plan are not going to happen overnight. They're for the roadmap for the city to move forward on. So we looked at some of just the high-level shared comprehensive plan goals, and these are the highlights that we found from the plan. There are others. There's a lot of actual tie-in to the plans and policies in the comp plan and in climate change and future development of the city. So I'll ask Abby to speak a little bit more on strategies, but what we really wanted to do when we looked at strategy development, what you try to do is connect strategies to how you're going to prepare the next, like, you know how the comp plan has the implementation matrix, so we're trying to point those strategies to community survey results, to the regional perspective of what's going on, because climate planning works better on a regional level. And then as well as to what will have the most impact. So we really looked at regionally impactful strategies, community inspired. We want to make sure that strategies can be actionable and then measurable. And then we use guiding criteria that SMPDC looked at, which is effective, efficient, and equitable for each one of these strategies. Do you want to give a little bit of a update on this too, Abby?
Yeah, so to develop the strategies, as Emily mentioned, we took a look at all of the assessment documents that we put together as part of this planning process. So we looked at what Saco was already doing or had done in the past that related to climate resilience. We looked at the results of the vulnerability assessment that we completed and the greenhouse gas inventory. We also took a look at regional planning documents, so transportation planning documents coming out of the Portland area comprehensive transportation system and the city's comprehensive plan. And then the survey results, as Emily mentioned as well, to really identify sort of a tailored list of strategies for Saco to consider. And then we also at SMPDC have been maintaining sort of a master strategy list that we've been developing and compiling based on other strategies that communities have implemented across the state as well as outside of the state. And so we provided that list to Emily and other city staff to review and take a sort of a first pass on. And then they provided us with some feedback that we were able to use to refine the strategy list. It was also shared with the Energy and Sustainability Committee and perhaps some others as well, other city staff. And so right now we have sort of a short list of strategies that we are working to refine and then also develop specific sub-strategies for. So right now we've got strategies organized under 5 broad categories. Those include health, safety, and well-being, buildings and energy, natural environment, transportation and land use, and then lastly, leadership and capacity. So we've tried to organize the strategies under those 5 overarching buckets. And as I said, we're going to be developing sub-strategies for each of the overarching strategies, and we'll also develop information about relative cost to implement those strategies. We will identify overlap with comprehensive plan strategies, and also develop some metrics or performance measures that can be used to track progress on those strategies.
So I think Abby pretty much covered these categories here, but this is what we're looking at. for a prioritization discussion and having a focus area and then performance indicators and building those out over the next month or so. I only have 4 columns here, but we'll have 5. These were just some initial strategies that we selected. This is a large graph, but we're going to share more info in the coming months as this moves forward as well. But these were just some initial strategies that Energy and Sustainability Committee has reviewed and signed off on, as well as the Conservation Commission took a look at these as well. And so we're building these out, and like I said, more to come. I can review any of these if you want me to state them, just because the font is kind of small. And I think that this is just really a conversation to let you know where we're at with the plan. And if you had any comments or feedback, you can certainly submit them to planning@sacomaine.org. You can take a look at the webpage, sacomaine.org/climate. But are there any initial questions on this information so far?
Not really a question, but actually it's a question. As far as the building and energy and natural resources, can we maybe come up with a plan to implement that into planning or into the zoning ordinance? I'm thinking residential units over so many units, the building must have solar energy, things like that. Or we could increase density. I think I've brought this up a couple times, but increase of density if you provide more green space, sort of things like that. But maybe this might be an opportunity to kind of hit some of those hard and require them, and instead of just talking about how nice they could be. But I think that something like that I think could work, and less pavement and parking areas and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we can definitely look into that as part of the strategy discussion. And Abby mentioned sub-strategies, so what you see on that this initial chart, these are kind of like the umbrella categories, and then we'll dive in deeper and see how we can assign like metrics and actionable items to each one of these. So we already have some ideas, but we can certainly look into that one.
Sure. Maybe we can speak with Dave Toomey about adopting the most recent energy code as well. I know from my side, when I'm not sitting at this table, it's difficult, but it's greatly beneficial, I think, to do something like that. But
We also have an urban green space standard in our ordinance, which we should probably look at revising
yeah, and
for it to work better.
Yeah.
So that could be another opportunity.
Any other questions, board members? Jeff?
So in the end, would there be a goal to have a regional plan to implement these strategies? Or?
I'll let Abby speak to that because she does more of the regional work.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of the work that we're doing with Saco is to identify city-specific strategies. But as Emily mentioned, we're working with several other communities in the region right now on climate action plans. And so something that we are doing internally at SMPDC is looking at commonalities across the strategies that have been identified by different communities, so that we can identify opportunities for regional coordination and collaboration, and also understand what we can do as an organization to better support communities in some of those regional strategies and objectives. And then for Saco specifically, one of the things we're doing is taking a very close look at the Biddeford strategies that have been identified. So Biddeford just recently passed their climate action plan last week, I believe. And so we will, once Saco's strategies are finalized, we'll definitely take a closer look at where there's overlap and try to support some cross-municipal coordination on those regional strategies.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for joining us. Emily, anything else on this?
No, thank you. Thank you both for coming out today. Appreciate it.
Okay, so next for our workshop, we're just going to take a few minutes and kind of do some scheduling and housekeeping for the upcoming 2024 year while we're all together. So first, I know we have one more regular meeting this month on the 19th, plus there's a joint city council meeting on the 18th. So 2 more times that we'd see each other through the end of this year. But looking into 2024, I know, Emily, we're starting to sketch out what the year might look like with application deadlines and things of that nature.
I have a list started of all the 2024 dates, and moving a couple. I mean, the first thing I would say is we probably are not going to want to meet on January 2nd, so I'm going to be proposing to move that meeting till January 9th. I don't know if we have any other scheduling things we want to talk about moving forward on the day of the week or anything.
Yeah, I think this is maybe started to come up a little bit in the background as I take attendance, just because people have various conflicts that come and go with their schedules. So I think one thing we might want to consider is there another day of the week that might work well for people in 2024, knowing that I think a few members are going to run into some Tuesday conflicts. So I think it might make sense to get a pulse from the group on like Wednesdays, for instance. Obviously, Monday nights are taken by council in here. But Wednesdays are another option. It would also give staff and applicants and everyone else 2 full business days to start the week to prepare for our meetings. So I just wanted to kind of check in with the group now and see, does anyone have any strong conflicts on Wednesdays that are standing throughout the year?
I do.
You do, Jeff? Okay. That overlaps with the time of our normal?
Yeah, not every Wednesday, but 2 Wednesdays a month.
Are they consistent Wednesdays or no?
Not always, but usually it's like the 2nd, the 4th.
Okay, so if we were doing like the 1st and 3rd, we might be able to swing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'd still be getting our packets Friday evening, so the date that the packets come out wouldn't change.
Yeah, that would be the case. The only thing with Wednesday is we did do a little bit of checking. Lisa did checking for us here. So there are school board meetings Wednesday nights. They're not the 1st and 3rd. So if you wanted to stay with the 1st and 3rd, we'd just kind of have to work our schedule a little bit around that. So that would just be a consideration.
And their
'Cause they
meetings
meet
are
here.
set already for the full calendar year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're probably more rigid than sometimes we are. Okay,
So we would just have to work around scheduling of this room for that.
okay. Anyone else with thoughts on Wednesdays? Glenn? Yeah, it gives everyone an extra day to prep, to start the week. I know we sometimes run into Tuesdays feeling like Mondays amongst all of us, so. Okay, no conflicts on your end. Joyce, anything from you?
No, not really. Just Fridays are bad, but I don't think anyone wants to do them on Fridays.
I haven't had that as a proposal yet from anyone.
Yeah, I have a Tuesday dilemma coming up here in the spring, so Wednesdays works very well for me. But obviously it's a group here, so
Okay.
I like Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. Matt, D, thoughts on Wednesdays?
Wednesdays would probably be better for me. Tuesdays and Mondays are bad, so,
Okay.
and Thursdays.
Okay. Wednesday is the best day. Okay.
So Wednesdays sound pretty good. I guess we'll,
As long as we
we
keep
work
like the first and third.
if we can.
As the
coordinate-
goal for
work
Jeff,
with Jeff
right.
and
So is that a sure thing? Can we
So-
change our calendars?
So actually, I had it wrong. The first and the third are bad for me.
Are the conflicts for you
Right.
on Wednesdays?
Yeah.
And is the time overlapping completely with our meeting, or is it just that you would be late?
I wouldn't be here till 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay, so that's a pretty big overlap.
yeah. And then, Emily, you said the second and fourth are more in conflict on Wednesdays?
I believe that was the case, yeah.
Well, we're just sort of discussing and putting out thoughts, so nothing.
Yeah, we have one more meeting this month that maybe we can keep talking about this too. But-
I think those were the second and fourth, but I'd have to just verify again.
Okay. We also don't have Rob with us tonight, so maybe do we have a workshop on the 19th?
Yeah, we can add this to the 19th.
Okay.
I did lay out all the Tuesday calendar year 2024 dates, so we'll do one for Wednesdays as well, to see how we could accommodate it.
See what it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Anything else for this topic? So, first of all, any conflicts January 9th for people if we move from the 2nd to the 9th, given the holiday?
That's fine for me on the 9th.
And really, if we end up talking on the 19th about moving the day of the week, that might change anyway, Emily, right? So,
Yeah.
but at least we can decide no meeting on the 2nd because of New Year's. Okay. I think that's probably it for now then, for if we put this back on the workshop again for next meeting.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So probably no meeting on the 2nd, definitely no meeting on the 2nd.
I think it's definitely no meeting on the 2nd, and we will change it to the 9th unless we hear otherwise. Oh, and Lisa just scheduled this room for the 9th.
Okay, yep. Would you keep, Emily, the week of the 9th plus then the week of the 15th in January? Is it going to be back to back?
It would probably be back to back. We'll lay it out for the
Yep.
December. How I had it laid out here was back to back. Yeah. The 9th and the 16th.
Okay. Okay, so that'll get us through the holidays. We'll talk about this again on the 19th, hopefully with Rob as well, and we'll check on the school board calendar. Okay. Anything else for the workshop, Emily?
No, thank you.
Great. Okay, so it is 5:54, and I'll call to order our regular meeting of the City of Saco Planning Board. It's Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. My name is Alyssa Bouchot. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Matt Provenzel. He's our vice chair. And then other board members joining us this evening include Jeff Grossman, Matt DeCiani, Joyce Larry Clark, and Glenn Charette. Rob Biggs is absent this evening. We have our city council liaison, Joe Gunn, with us, and city staff, including Emily Cole Prescott, our city planner, and Lisa Harmon, our planning coordinator. So we will first review our November 7th meeting minutes, which can be found attached to the agenda in our packet. Are there any questions, comments, edits to these minutes?
Madam Chair, I move to accept the November 7th meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you for the second, Glenn. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I'll call for a vote on the minutes, starting with Matt D.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Matt P.
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0 to approve. Okay, the next item on our agenda is an application regarding Biddeford Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit. This is in regards to 138 Main Street, which is map 37, lot 8 in the Saco Island zone. And Emily, I'll let you give an overview on this. My understanding right now is there's a request to table to a future meeting in January.
Yes, thank you. I'm just pulling it up on the screen. The applicant Biddeford Saco Old Orchard Beach Transit requests site plan review. This is for installing of 2 overhead electric bus chargers with transformers and associated electrical manhole and other connections. This will be considered an accessory use according to our review, as well as essential service for bus charging. So at this point, the applicant's just requested to be seen on the first meeting in January, asked that the application be tabled as they work out some additional details in response to questions and comments from staff.
Great. Board members, any questions right now on this request? Not hearing any. We do have a suggested motion that incorporates the request to move this to our first meeting in January.
Madam Chair, I move to continue application review for the first planning board meeting in January 2024 for 138 Main Street.
Thank you for the motion, Matt. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you for the second, Glenn. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. I'll call for votes, starting with Matt D.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Matt P.
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0 to table this to our first meeting in January. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a review of a standard operating procedures document that we have been drafting and revising. So I'll let Emily give an overview of where this document is in its creation, and we can discuss various items on it.
Thank you. So the board has seen this before at previous meetings. This is what staff is considering to be the final from our desks. Certainly can still have board amend anything in here to reflect a process or procedure. I think we've done a good job with the planning board members, so thank you to the vice chair and chair for spearheading this with us and other planning board comments along the way. I think it'll be a good document for Saco. We did in the past have Human Resources review it, and there were no red flags there, and we also had our city attorney, Tim Murphy, review it and sign off on it as well.
Great. So board members, any questions right now on this document or any comments, edits?
I had one comment, and I'm not sure it's a suggested edit. Just on page 14, when it talks about conflicts of interest, and if a board member has potentially a conflict of interest, they're supposed to review the nature of the conflict with the board and the applicant. I'm wondering if it also makes sense to ask the public if any member of the public has any input on that issue. It just seems like an optics issue to me that we decide that one of us doesn't have a conflict and the applicant agrees with us. Is that because the applicant wants someone to sit on the board for this particular issue? And I don't know if that means I want to open all of this discussion up to a public hearing, but I'm putting it out there.
One thing that comes to mind for me is that we had a legal training pertaining to who has standing with an application. And I think I had even been one of the ones that asked a question as far as, you know, we certainly have times where we hear from residents who are abutters and are on the abutter list. And then we have times where we hear from residents on that project who are not on that list and maybe live quite a distance from it. And I recall hearing that really it was the applicant themselves that has standing in that case, and not so much, for instance, the residents that are living 10 miles away from a project. So I just don't know if I would be in favor of opening this topic up to the public as well, because I don't know how we would ever draw the line.
Yeah, and I'm bringing it up just for purposes of discussion. I agree with you on that, and I think it could get into the weeds of the application itself really quickly. I just find it interesting that the applicant has a say, but the abutters don't, at least not until public comment. I suppose people are always welcome to raise an issue during public comment.
Yeah, and I think my thought is just, it's not the public bringing the application before us. It's not a member of the public, it's the applicant themselves.
I agree. I don't think we should open that up to the public. I think the conflict of interest has to be resolved within the board, and the public should stay out of it.
I don't think there's anything to say that we couldn't hear something, though, during a public hearing that would then prompt the board to want to talk about it again in regards to a member's participation. Right?
True.
Yeah, I'd agree with Alyssa. I have no desire to open that up to the public. And, you know, I think the people have standing is the board and the applicant. And you certainly don't want one member of the public objecting and then you have to recuse yourself.
'Cause they could object to everything,
Right.
right at that
Right.
point. That's what I'm thinking of.
They could object to everyone.
Anyone else, Matt? No?
No, I was just thinking, I'm in agreement. I'm just thinking where the board could answer a question if maybe if a member of the audience or a resident has a question or wants further understanding, I wouldn't be opposed to providing that, but as far as like we're saying, a full-on vote, I don't agree with that. It should be between the board and the applicant.
Yeah, they can raise an issue during public comment if they wish.
True. They can raise that issue,
Right.
and the chairperson can either not respond or respond.
Yeah, I think we've navigated that in the past, where if things have come up during a public hearing that seems like it's worth discussing further, we'll discuss it as a board and obviously with the applicant, if appropriate.
Yeah, it's the wording for me, an issue. I see it more of as a question than an issue. I guess a question could become an issue, but I guess I feel like it would be a question at first, and we avoid any issues, but just semantics, I guess.
I think even a single question can open up a can of worms that we may not be able to bail ourselves out of. So I would be against any participation from the public on a conflict of interest.
Other than comments that could be made during a hearing, yeah.
Yep.
Emily, any thoughts on this from a staff perspective, or?
I think the board's covered it well.
Okay. Joyce, anything else on that? I know it was kind of a brainstorming topic.
No, it was just a question, just more of a thought process, I guess, and I may be thinking more of perceptions of bias as opposed to conflicts of interest, and I think that's a different issue altogether.
Right, and I think that issue sometimes doesn't present itself until we're already through half of the review, right?
Right.
So that's it's sometimes hard to get ahead of that at the very beginning. But again, that could be a situation where we hear something during a hearing, and in the same way that we're having the applicant respond to outstanding questions, we could have the board then discuss an issue that was raised during the hearing of something of that nature.
Madam Chair, if I may
Yep.
too, I think just listening to the conversation, the first bullet, we're saying in cases where the board member is related to an applicant or has some financial stake in an application with the planning board, the board member shall report the conflict and then recuse themselves from the matter completely. So I think that's a pretty strong statement.
It
If you-
is.
So I think if you're already making that statement that if there is some sort of financial interest in an application, that you should just be kind of checking your own self out of the process.
Yeah, and I think what Joyce is getting at is something a little different from that. That seems like, I think as a board, we've done really well grasping this bullet point through the years.
That one's pretty black and white.
Yeah.
It's the second one, more so, and maybe not even, but, you know, if there's okay, our minutes from the last meeting, one of my relatives was in a butter or across the street neighbor. And I reported it and reported that they hadn't raised any sort of issues with it. So, you know, I don't think that's an automatic recusal.
No, but it is something that I think you made the right decision on, which is it gets brought up
discussed.
and it's discussed. Yeah. Okay.
I think we've gone down a rabbit hole talking about avoiding going down rabbit holes.
Yes.
I've got a couple issues, I guess. On page 16, under quorum, specifically, in case of a tie vote, I understand what the ordinance says. The ordinance under Article 7 is pretty clear. But this paragraph also directs us to the Maine Municipal Association Manual under page 39. And if you read that paragraph, in fact, I'll read the sentence that kind of contradicts what the article says. And this is a quote, by the way. Under the Maine Municipal Legal Manual, if the tie cannot be broken, it should probably be treated as having the same effect as a vote to defeat the motion. Let's see, that's not the sentence I wanted. Bear with me here until I find it. Oh, yeah. The first sentence of that, if a motion results in a tie vote, the board has failed to act, and another vote should be taken to try to get a definitive decision. In my planning board history of 16 years and training from MMA, they've always repeated that sentence. A definitive vote should be tried to be attained. So that's in direct conflict of what our ordinance says. So that's an issue in my book. It's got to be one or the other. And I've had lawyers from two municipalities back this sentence up. We've had a lawyer sit in this council chamber that said exactly those words.
Yeah, so I think right now, I see your point with the contradiction there. Emily, I'm not sure that there's been any direction or guidance to you in drafting this to do anything other than present these two references, right? Like this document as it stands right now did go through legal review as well.
Oh, yeah, Tim
Yep.
signed off on it. And I think, Glenn, this, if I can remember correctly, this planning SOP, these references, I think you sent these to me, right?
I did.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all very good references.
But if there are references, and a planning board member during deliberation goes to that sentence, which I know I did, and possibly Alyssa did, we're after a definitive vote, which is against what the ordinance says. So I think we either have to rewrite the ordinance or not include the reference.
I don't see a conflict. I mean,
You don't see a conflict in that?
I don't. I mean, it suggests we go back for a definitive vote, but in any case, whether we do or we don't, the motion fails if you don't have a majority. So I don't see any conflict in the language.
Madam Chair, if I may, if it's helpful, the big thing that the board is asked to do is provide a finding as to why a decision is made, right? So I think that's the piece of it. So if a motion fails and then there's no finding, coming to the finding on the standard that is under review is probably what you would be trying to do with the MMA guidance.
Yeah, in a way, Glenn, I mean, you could almost rewrite that MMA guidance in your head to say the board has then failed to provide a finding on their decision, which is how we've then had conversations here at the board level continue in a way which sometimes we don't get anywhere, nothing changes. Sometimes motions are made after that to try to get us to the point of having findings, and sometimes those motions fail. Sometimes a motion passes, sometimes the same motion that tied the first time is made and it passes the second time because we've all had discussion again. I don't think the combination of these two sentences in this SOP, these various sentences, I don't think it's going to change how we approach it in the future if it happens. We're going to be having the same discussion then. There was a tie vote. We haven't acted to make findings. Can we discuss coming up with something that actually has findings attached to it that can definitively be on record as this is how we've acted on this one standard? And I think that process sometimes will then clear up the ambiguity of the tie.
Yep. I kind of agree with that, but just kind of.
It's not a straightforward step-by-step.
It's not. And,
Yeah.
That's what I fear. If someone from the public, all of a sudden now they go to the MMA manual because Glenn Charette happened to bring it up, and they read that paragraph. Madam Chair, how would you explain that?
They've read it before and they didn't
I doubt if anybody in the public has read this.
They've referenced it in the
Yeah.
public hearings, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that, honestly, that situation and how we get through that challenge in the moment, if we can, agree as a board that we want to have findings to back whatever decisions we're making, it should then clear us to get to a point where if we land on a tie on something, we have more discussion and get to the point of something that's more definitive with findings that we can put on record so that if someone was not in the room with us that night, they can at least review that record and know, okay, this is how it started. It started with, a tie and it turned into this discussion and now we have findings attached to a motion that actually passed.
I understand what you're saying. But if you fall back on the city
Yep.
ordinance,
Yep.
a tie vote makes that project go down the tube. We've been through this. I think I'd rather have another legal opinion on the ordinance versus what the MMA manual says. You know,
Glenn, are you suggesting, are you saying you'd like it, if there's a tie vote, you'd like the requirement to be that a vote gets taken to not be a tie vote? Is that?
no, if I can be frank, I think what Alyssa went through with the last huge subdivision was perfectly done by her. And that's using my experience as a planning board member for over 15 years, because I've practiced that same thing she practiced. But it doesn't follow the Saco ordinance. Alyssa was basically falling back on what MMA said. You know, you should continue to have a vote until a vote is affirmative. And that's what she did. But that's not what the ordinance says she should have done.
Okay, I understand now.
If I can just interject here, Madam Chair, I think what we should do, if I can recommend, is that we can just, the SOP makes it very clear at the top that if there's any conflict at all in the guidance that's referenced, that the ordinance prevails.
Yep.
So that's pretty clear, and if you want, we can certainly get another, we could ask, Tim to come in and talk with us, specific to one topic, but I would hate to hold up the whole document for one topic, so I don't know if there's any language we can look at amending tonight to then talk about, that would be a subsequent item for the future review.
Why couldn't you just remove the reference?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, Jeff. If we remove the reference, then
Then it's pretty clear.
it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
But neither one of us are lawyers.
I mean, we have plenty of other things in here that don't have references.
I know, but nothing quite as important as this.
Well, but it's clear. If you don't get an affirmative vote, it fails. I mean, and no one can make you sit here for 10 or 20 hours till you come to a positive vote. So
No, and I don't think it's about coming to a positive vote. I think we've had other situations separate from maybe a scenario that Glenn's referencing, where we are just, there's a motion made that simply is, for instance, stating a finding of fact. And we haven't agreed on the wording of it, and it has resulted in a tie simply over wording.
Yeah.
And we have then discussed what maybe half the room didn't like and half the room liked, and gotten to a place where we've edited that paragraph to the point where everyone's now okay with it, and someone then proposes a new motion with that amendment, and it passes. I think that's a perfect example of if we just put up our hands because we got to a tie on something that maybe could be easily, adjusted,
That's very true, very true.
we should then follow what the MMA is telling us, which is like, we haven't really acted on that. We've just kind of said, well, we hit a hurdle. What do? We walk away from it? When really, I think once we take a vote, you can kind of tell, okay, half the room isn't comfortable with this, but is there a way that you would be comfortable with it? That side of the room proposes something that the other side of the room is totally fine with. And then we suddenly have a motion that's passing with findings that backs up how we all feel.
Yeah, but even if you remove the reference, nothing's going to prevent you from doing that.
Right. Yep.
I mean, I don't have an issue with the reference, but if it's clearer, then I'd say remove it.
I would just, I'm looking for a satisfactory answer in my mind. And we've been working on this bylaws for a while, and I don't think a couple more weeks is going to hurt anything if we get a legal opinion on what the ordinance, Saco's ordinance says versus MMA.
And we're just talking about the verbiage on page 16.
Correct.
On
Versus
quorum, that
verbiage
just-
on page 39 of MMA.
Sure, that just says more information about tie votes, that final sentence. We're talking about striking that final sentence.
Well, he's looking for more legal opinion on it, not necessarily striking it right now.
Sure,
Yeah.
but that's, I mean, yeah, okay.
So Emily, in the absence of that second half of this item we're talking about on page 16, there are no other references, right, to the MMA manual as a resource in this document?
There's a
I think-
few.
Yeah, there's
there,
a few.
Yeah, there are.
Could I ask you
But
a
as,
question?
like, a link to the full document, is there, I didn't see that under, like, the resources, right? Attachments and resources.
I think we have it linked to the full, as one attachment. No, it doesn't seem we do. I think maybe that's why, is that, Glenn, why you went and gave us, I think that's maybe why you pulled these things out of the MMA manual.
That's correct.
I almost wonder if the board wants to, so the bylaws, my understanding is section 10, 11, 12, 13, presented by Glenn was supposed to be like a quick reference bylaws sheet. Do we want to just strike that section for right now? And then come up with a separate one-pager set of bylaws that we can agree to? Most of this language sounds agreeable, but that way we know we have like a one,
That's actually
Page
what
sheet.
I envisioned, that the planning board would have like a single-page bylaws that they can quickly reference. I would be okay with that, but I would like to think that we could still ask a lawyer to compare the two sentences. You know, do we combine the ordinance with the MMA sentence or not? I mean, we can strike the bylaws section for now.
I just want to ask a question just to make sure. So the ordinance is a Saco passed this ordinance that states this, that language that you're referencing, right?
Correct.
The MMA manual, that's just a manual, right? That's not, the legislature didn't say, we're passing all these things, this is coming down from the
In
state.
my mind, it's a legal document put out by Maine Municipal Association.
But my question is, what is their standing? Right, if the
Like-
MMA, I know who the MMA, I know who they are,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I know who they are and what they do, but where do they have legal authority? That's where I'm getting at.
It's kind of a best practices.
So that's where I'm saying, we passed an
Yeah.
ordinance, our ordinance states this, and theirs is just an opinion. That's kind of where my mind is going in that direction now.
That they don't supersede city ordinances.
Exactly, that's where,
Yeah.
again, I'm not a legal expert by any means, but I'm just thinking like common sense. If MMA is not a, if the legislature didn't pass these rules.
Well,
then-
that's true, Matt, but this particular sentence comes from a court case that the judge
that
verbally
the
said.
judge verbally, okay.
Yeah, they base their stuff on like case law, but
On case law.
it's, yeah.
But you see where I'm going with that,
Absolutely.
the city passed an ordinance, that's how the city operates. This is guidance, this is saying how you should do things. We think you should do it this way. Which one should supersede? That's how I look at it. In my head is like, does the ordinance supersede, or does this guidance document say it's the one that should supersede it? I don't know. It's a tough question, right?
I think there's times where they work hand in hand, and the guidance document from MMA can fill in some gaps and answer some questions when our ordinance doesn't
Absolutely.
help us. But,
But they shouldn't be contradictory.
I think there will be times when they are, because you get two attorneys in the room talking about the same topic, and it could be anything. They're not necessarily going to agree on everything.
Yep.
Any side to it?
Yeah, every industry has, I mean, if you ask me to come give you a price on your house, I'm going to give you something that's a little different from another agent who also does that area. Yeah. So,
I'm open to striking the reference.
just
And-
getting rid of the reference altogether.
Yeah, and moving the document forward.
That sounds fine to me. I guess I'm missing we're talking about a tie vote, but there's nothing in the ordinance that stops any vote, whether it's for or against, to have additional discussion and take up the vote again, right?
That's correct.
So we're being specific about a tie vote, but there's nothing.
4-2 or 5-1.
Right, so if there's a 4-2 vote, either for or against, the board can say, well, hold on, wait, I don't know if I quite understood that, that motion correctly. I want to make sure, can we word it another way and see how it goes? I mean, that's what we're sort of talking about with a tie, right? We could do that at any point. Doesn't have to be on a
Nothing's
tie,
stopping
right?
you to do that. Yeah, nothing's
Okay.
stopping you to do that.
All right, I know.
Well, and we do need to make findings on everything, but again, we could have a motion that passes that has some findings in it, and then someone says, well, could we add another motion that has more findings to further clarify or add more to this? We just typically happen to make one motion corresponding to each standard or each finding.
Yeah, it's the
We could be
difficulty-
having 4 motions per standard if we wanted to get that.
Right,
in
of
depth.
course, it's the difficulty of providing clear direction and findings of the board when we're split, so. Okay.
Okay, so did we land on striking that? I mean, so Emily, at the start of 13 here, which is the bottom of page 15, you referenced the 2017 edition of the manual. So Glenn, are you thinking of striking it from there as well, or just in the section that you referenced relating to quorum?
Well, initially, I was agreeing with Jeff and to strike the reference on page 16. In my mind, that doesn't solve the issue in my mind. And that issue being, that gray area is still out there that we haven't resolved by anybody legally trained.
I tend to think that we should keep the reference to the MMA manual incorporated into this document somehow, because I do think it is a tool that we rely on in certain situations, and we're also required to take MMA training. So the manual is something that we all have a copy of for that reason. I don't disagree with you that that section is gray right now. I just don't know that, getting back to Emily's point, I don't know that us delaying this document in an effort to get a black and white on that is going to get us anywhere right now.
What is your rush in getting this decided tonight, if I may ask?
I don't necessarily have a rush, it's just we've had this on the agenda since June, and there's other pieces of the document that I think are important, and it would be nice to have it all set going into the, fresh into the January new year. So if it's a matter of either pulling the bylaws off, and we can kind of bring those back as a one-pager and go through them,
So
or...
Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm open to whatever the board wants to do. I just think that we've put a lot of time and effort into this document, and we're going to have applications taking up agendas and blocks of time going forward too, so I just don't want to miss an opportunity for the board to work this through.
Emily, what's the process going to be like moving forward with this document if we want to revise it?
Would bring it back for a majority vote with the planning board.
So if someone, say, in a month from now, was like, I thought of something else that really we should consider in this document, a single board member can just ask you to put that as a discussion point, maybe on the agenda?
Yeah, I would say a board member probably would just want to bring it up and let us know. I mean, like, for instance, I think we have here that we meet on Tuesdays. Well, maybe we weren't.
We might be revising that,
If we
yeah.
move that, then we'll have to bring it back as a revision.
Yes, if I understand the bylaws, they can be changed willingly
Right,
by a vote of the board.
yes.
Well, same with this document as a whole. Like, if we left something out
Yep.
in this document that you thought of a month from now,
I'd be okay to adopt this document as it is, provided we still get a legal opinion on what those two sentences mean. And then we can change it down the line. Does that work?
I would support that.
I think that makes sense.
I
think,
support that.
yeah. I'm one of the ones that's been pushing for this to just wrap up at the end of the year cleanly so that we can get into the new year with it. So I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's going to be a living document. I mean, there will be changes. Okay. So, yep.
I'll make a motion to adopt the SOP as written. I don't want to call it condition, but I would ask the city planner to get a legal opinion on the two statements that we've been talking about, and we'll make changes to the this operating document as needed. So we'll operate tonight. We'll vote. I make a motion to adopt it as it is tonight.
Second.
Okay, thank you for the motion, Glenn. Thank you for the second, Matt P. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I'll call for a vote on Glenn's motion, starting with Matt D.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Matt P.
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, so Emily, we have a request to you within that as well for follow-up. Anything else on that item tonight? I think we're good.
No, thank you.
Okay.
We'll get it posted to our webpage.
Great, thank you. Okay, last thing, any updates, planner discussion updates?
I wanted to just talk with the full board. I know I mentioned timelines in the past and kind of like processing of applications going into 2024. We've had a focus in our office on really having applicants host neighborhood meetings, which is the first opportunity for public input. So you probably will have seen those. We have we put them on the online meeting calendar, and the applicant has to send notices out 10 days in advance is how that process works. It's up to the applicant to host that meeting, and then it's a time when residents can speak, residents within 600 feet or 200 feet of the project area can speak directly to the applicant about the project. It's not required for every single project, but it is required for many of our site plan review projects. And also for multifamilies, I think it's more than 6 units. So going forward, though, we've had a process where we put staff puts applications directly on the planning board agenda as a public hearing. So application completeness finding and public hearing in one night. And I'm curious to know if the board has an interest in breaking up the application completeness review and the public hearing to 2 nights. And the reason is, what it would look like is staff would basically schedule the application to be reviewed by the planning board for application completeness finding. And then the planning board would be scheduling the public hearing for, 2 meetings out, basically. The ordinance does say the planning board is supposed to be finding everything complete. What this would do is it would provide an opportunity for the application to be on the agenda at least 2 times. It would also give you, as the board, input on the application initially, because not everyone does sketch plan review. So you'll have some opportunity to provide more initial comments if there's something that you'd like to see in the application. So you'd be providing comments right around the time that staff is also providing their comments, because sometimes what happens is we have all the staff comments, but we haven't gotten board comments. So you're kind of getting everything all together. What we would do is we'd have 1 night for application completeness review, where you'd just be asked to do that, hear from the applicant, give some initial comments, responses, and feedback for the applicant to return to you with, and schedule the public hearing if you find the application complete. Then when the applicant returns for that second meeting night, that's when we would host the public hearing, hear from the applicant about the revisions made to the plan set, and you can do deliberations that night. The purpose of this would be to have the application before you're getting to the public hearing night. So it gives an opportunity to provide comment to the applicant directly from board members before we get into further comments, further responses from the applicant. It would be 2 meetings. What I'd recommend is that you would see the application a little sooner. So it would be 2 meetings. There might be a little more time for the applicant. It would definitely be more time as far as coming out to another meeting. But what it would do is it would give opportunity for the item to be on the agenda before just one night. Sometimes these things are on for one night. And additionally, for our scheduling purposes, we could put it on as application completeness review, and then it will give you eyes on it before you're in public hearing. So you would get like 2 review processes. So other communities do this. This is kind of a very informal flow chart of how it could work. Post-approval is our compliance monitoring. That's when we ask for the financial guarantee. So the steps for the application would be, you'd meet with staff, most likely, that's optional. You'd have a neighborhood meeting. The applicant would submit an application within 4 months of hosting the neighborhood meeting. We would do like an initial staff review to make sure the application is complete enough for the board to review. You'd go to planning board meeting just under application completeness review for the board to hear from the applicant and to ask for any additional comments, and or if we want to schedule a site walk, that would be the night to schedule that. And then the staff would be asking the planning board to schedule the meeting days. We would, of course, help you with the meeting days and times and make sure you're in compliance with the ordinance. Then we would have the applicant respond to comments from the planning board as well as the staff and any peer reviews. Then you'd go to the next planning board meeting where you'd have your public hearing and your planning board deliberations. We have a 14-day notice period, so you'd probably be a month out between your application completeness finding meeting and your public hearing meeting, so I just want to make sure that's clear. And then depending on if the board needs another night, you could add another night or deliberate that night.
So typically, what would this add to the application process?
This would add 1 meeting.
So a month or 2 months or?
It's a little bit hard to say, Jeff, because right now on site plan review, we have been waiting for a lot of the comments to be addressed. So this would give you an opportunity to give the applicant comments kind of like during that process. So it could probably add 2 or 3 weeks, potentially.
I'd be in favor of it of larger projects, but for smaller ones, I don't want to delay the process.
Yeah, I think we could probably say if it's like an amendment, maybe it doesn't go through this, but if it's like a new site plan review, then it would go through this process.
Yeah, or if it's a simple 2-lot subdivision, I don't see the need to add all that time to it, but.
Subdivision's kind of going through we're kind of already doing this somewhat on subdivision just because we have to meet 30-day timelines, so. You're kind of already seeing a morphed hybrid version of this.
Yeah, overall, I'm in support. I agree. It'd be nice to have an opportunity or see if we can work through a process of, like you mentioned, maybe amendments. Don't need to go through that process, or maybe you can provide some other thoughts as well. But I think I like it. I like being able to see that application, see if there's any waivers being requested. We can address those at that time, opposed to after. And it gives the board a little bit more time to digest the project, come up with thoughts. I like that. I like that opportunity. And then, as far as lengthening the process, I mean, we have a few a year that come before us that are actually truly complete and go through in one fell swoop. We have a lot of conditions, or we're still looking for information, so a lot of applicants are coming back anyway, so I don't think making it an official two meetings is really delaying the project. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of applications that come before us recently that are getting tabled, but they're coming before us because of timeframes, but I suspect if we've reviewed them from application of completeness, then we wouldn't be tabling it. So I think it could be successful. But I agree with Jeff. If there are smaller, straightforward projects, if there's an opportunity to have a project that can meet a lot of waivers, then I think, I don't know, maybe we can make a way for the board at their discretion to waive the application of completeness if they hit a couple check boxes. I'm not sure what those specifically are this moment or if that works, but if someone has 3 lots and they're cutting 1 lot, breaking away for a family member, whatnot, it meets subdivision, you know, that potentially meets, let's just make that happen. Is that what you're gonna say? Just thoughts.
I was just going to say, like, for site plans, we could just say if a site plan requires a neighborhood meeting, then it follows this process.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's good, yeah. And if it doesn't require it, we wouldn't, yeah.
And then for subdivisions, if it's an amendment
Sure.
of no more than 3 lots,
Yeah,
then it goes through this process, which a lot of them were kind of going through this process anyway. But
Sure.
that'd be good.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts on that? Okay, not hearing any. Anything else, Emily?
No, I'll give a full update at the next meeting, but just a couple of things. We are moving forward. You heard about the Climate Adaptation and Action Plan, and we had Biddeford Saco Dental Associates amendment, a site plan amendment on Route 1 that we reviewed as staff. It was 628 square feet. So we're getting ready to issue that approval as well. So it's to allow access to the second floor so they can use the second floor. But like I said, I'll give a full update at the next meeting. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we are seeing each other next on the 18th,
Well, Monday is the 18th.
Monday, the 18th, for city council, starting at
Maybe you're not.
6:30, right?
Yes.
Okay, 6:30 on the 18th, and then regular meeting on the 19th. Any other questions?
I just have
Matt?
one, maybe it's a request or a technology request. I know there's ways where, when you're presenting or the applicant's presenting, where they can cast the presentations right to our iPads. And I know you do it on the screens, right? But it would be nice, sometimes I feel like it would be nice to be able to look at the presentation as they're giving it, as opposed to always doing that. So that would be my technology request. And I know it can be done.
It seems like,
I know it can be done.
I think we mentioned once, Matt, perhaps getting 2 TVs on the podium, like maybe if there were 2 angled TVs kind of facing this way, that way we can
Even-
look at the applicant with the,
If that's cheaper, then do it. That's my request. But something where I feel like just having to spin around all the time, or that's
Yeah.
so far away, my eyes, I'm squinting. But
Yeah.
if there were TVs there, that works too.
yeah, that was my first thought. If we could get TVs, a TV on the podium facing us would be clever.
That works too. But I do know there are ways to you could give presentations that you can cast it to people's iPads. I know that is out there in the technology world.
I think Matt's offering to research this and come back with an action plan in the new year.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
No, but there is ways to do it. The TV just solves it as just as easily, if that's a possibility. You know, if there's a TV lying around and you can do something like that, I'm all for it.
I don't know if the ClickShare program can do that or not. We can ask.
I've seen other boards have, they have like fixed iPads at the tables here that get presented, but, yeah.
Things like that, you just have to research it and find the right technology company to help you.
Great. Okay. Emily's adding that to her research list for the new year.
I'll do a little research of my own for you as well.
Good.
I will do that.
Go to some Scarborough meetings.
Great.
I mean, if we're doing that, why can't we just move these TVs over here? We're the only people looking at them.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know if we can.
Yeah.
Oh,
Any
well, I
other
always believe-
questions, comments tonight? Okay, not hearing any. It's 6:47 and we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.